Okay, so let's look on our graph viewport right here. And flow of this graph is going from left to right. As well, you can zoom in and out by using Control key and right click on the mouse, and you can see you can zoom in and out of this. You also can right click, hold down mouse to pan around to readjust properly. Okay, so by default, when you start, you will have your root, age, season, health, or different depending on your preset. And as usual, you start with one segment. Segment is just a basic primitive that you can adjust to any other options. And more you're going with this, more you can connect different type of the segments or primitives. So let's, as example, I'm click right here on empty space, right click geometry, and I'm using another segment. To connect this segment, I just need to click on the side, and you can see I can drag it. Okay. As soon when I connect this segment, you'll notice my geometry and a preview viewport is changed. So now I have this kind of 4 different branches starting. I can create another segment by right clicking, or I can highlight, copy, and paste. When I copy and paste, it's copy parameters, but it's also connecting two existent and currently one overlay, so I don't see different. I can select, disconnect, and reconnect it differently, which you notice it's creating additional segments from my parent, and it's going, of course, the root, parent, child. Now for this child, will be parent you can affect. Each time when you connect, you'll notice right here on the side you have a segment 1 added, and so on. Inside your graph, you can modify, create a very complex. You can also group them in meta node, which is similar to the view, to make it much easier to preview. You can also work with different type of the components, and we'll look on this when we start working a little bit closer up with our plan. Overall, for this viewport, it's a graphical representation of connections. We can easily select any component as well. If you can go ahead, click right there and select just specific component from your screen. So for example, I'm gonna click and says, okay, I want to select this segment. So you can select different segments at this point and preview. As well, if you want to highlight a segment that currently selected, so you can go and highlight them from menu. So in this case, you notice I'm selecting different segments, and this is same group segments. You remember I say if you hold it and you want all of these segments, so you can highlight all of them, or you can just highlight one of the specific segment from this branch. Again, this is segment. If we modify it, it will apply just only to one. If we want to modify all of them, we'll need reselect, and this will apply to all of the segments. So you can enable highlights if you prefer, or depend what is make easy for your workflow. Okay, so let me out a little bit. Okay, so right here we have our graph with a flow. Couple things on connections. It always will begin from the root. It's based on your plant. You can connect, disconnect by highlighting connections and just click delete to remove some of those connections. You can always connect to previous segment or new child. So let's create right here. So we can reconnect it and create a quite a bit complex connections in this case. Okay, so we can have it multiple. Some of those connections were allowed. As well, you will notice on some color different between our connections. So right here is blue and the green. If you work with the view, you will be familiar with some of those definitions. The color connections, nodes, numeric, or vector. So that kind of not necessarily represent exactly the same, because the green in the view was representing the color connections. Right here it's more as a object or geometry connections, so a little bit different. But overall, this is our graph viewport, which we use it quite a bit extensive when we work creating new plans.